The girl heard moans and in the same instant found a man with cancer in a hole, suffering terribly. But before she could rescue him, another person appeared behind her. And what happened next was simply shocking. Comment something and subscribe to support my work. The night was cold in Chicago, and Lily walked through the dark streets downtown, her bare feet already calloused from the rough asphalt. At 7 years old, she knew every alley and corner of that area well, knew exactly where the restaurants usually left their scraps and which doorways she could shelter in when the rain fell hard. That night, her stomach ached more than usual. It had been 2 days since she had found anything other than a few fruit peels at a market. Her big, dark eyes scanned every corner, while her thin arms hugged her body in a futile attempt to ward off the cold. The biting wind carried the smell of food from a nearby diner, making her stomach protest even more. She approached the back of the establishment, hoping to find something in the trash bags that hadn't yet been collected, when a different sound caught her attention. It was a faint moan, almost imperceptible, coming from somewhere near an abandoned building. Lily hesitated. She had already learned that on the streets, curiosity could be dangerous. But something in that sound reminded her of herself on the nights when she cried alone from hunger and cold. She approached the building slowly, her small feet cautiously avoiding the pieces of broken glass scattered on the ground. The moan became clearer. It was definitely someone in pain. Among the rubble, there was a large hole, like a deep crater formed by the partial collapse of the structure. Lily knelt on the edge and leaned over to look. At the bottom of the hole, partially covered by shadows, was a man. His clothing, which once must have been elegant, was dirty and torn. His thin, pale face had stubble, and his eyes were what frightened Lily the most. They were eyes that seemed to have lost all will to live, deep and opaque, like those of a wounded animal that had already accepted its fate. The man was breathing with difficulty, each breath seeming to cost him immense effort. Beside him, a broken cane indicated that he had probably fallen and couldn't get out. "Mister?" Lily called out, her small voice echoing in the walls of the hole. "Are you okay?" The man moved his head slightly in her direction, but it seemed to take enormous effort even for this simple movement. His chapped lips moved, but no sound came out. Lily realized he needed water. She looked around, desperate. There was a puddle of clean water from the recent rain accumulated on a piece of tarp. She ran to it and, using her small cupped hands, managed to bring some to the man. Carefully, she let the water drip onto his lips. He drank it greedily, as if he hadn't seen water in days. When he finally managed to speak, his voice came out hoarse and weak. "Thank you, little one." "I need to get you out of there," Lily said, looking around for something she could use as a rope. But there was nothing useful nearby. I'm going to try to pull you up," she decided, even knowing she was too small to succeed. She carefully descended into the hole, her feet finding support on the ledges of the irregular wall. When she got close to the man, the smell of sickness and old sweat hit her, but she didn't back away. She had seen too much misery on the streets to care about that. "What's your name?" she asked as she tried to put her thin arms around him to help him get up. "Sam," he replied with a sad smile. "But don't waste your time on me, child. I'm already at the end." "Don't say that," Lily protested, pulling him with all the strength she could muster. But it was useless. He was too big, and she too small. Her hands were already sore from the effort of trying to lift him. Sam's breathing became increasingly difficult, and Lily began to panic. She couldn't let him die there, alone at the bottom of that hole. She tried to shout for help, but her voice was lost in the night. The people passing on the nearby street didn't even look in her direction. They were used to ignoring the screams that came from the dark alleys of the city. Tears of frustration began to run down Lily's dirty face. It was then that she heard a hoarse voice behind her, making her heart jump. Need some help, little lady?" She turned around frightened, fearing to find someone with bad intentions. But what she saw was an elderly man, his back bent by the weight of years, leaning on a worn cane. His tired eyes carried an old sadness, but there was also in them a spark of compassion that Lily rarely saw on the streets. "Please," she begged, pointing to Sam. "He needs to get out of here." The old man approached the edge of the hole, assessing the situation. Lily could see that he himself could barely stand, but still, without hesitation, he began to descend carefully toward them. "My name is Dave," he said, his voice trembling with the effort. "And together, we're going to get this man out of here." Dave descended with difficulty into the hole, his joints protesting with every movement. The ground was unstable, loose pieces of concrete threatening to give way under his feet. Lily watched apprehensively, fearing that the old man would also get hurt. When he finally reached Sam, Dave knelt beside him, ignoring the pain in his knees. "Good heavens, man, how did you end up here?" Dave asked, examining Sam's deplorable condition. Sam coughed, a dry and painful sound that seemed to come from deep within his chest. I fell. The cane broke." His voice was just a whisper. "But maybe it's for the best. I have nothing left to live for." Dave frowned, recognizing in the man's eyes a type of resignation that he had seen many times during his years working in construction. It was the look of someone who had lost everything. "Nonsense," he replied firmly. "While there's life, there's hope, and this girl didn't come down here for nothing to let you give up." Lily nodded vigorously, her big eyes shining with determination. Together, she and Dave positioned themselves on either side of Sam. The old man put an arm under the fallen man's shoulders, while Lily tried to help as she could. "On three," Dave said. "1, 2, 3. The effort to lift Sam was immense. The man, although very thin, was still tall and too heavy for them. Dave felt a sharp pain run through his left arm, but he gritted his teeth and continued pulling. Lily, despite her diminutive size, pushed with all the strength she could muster. Sam tried to help, but his muscles didn't respond as they should. Each movement seemed to drain what was left of his strength. His breathing became increasingly difficult, and beads of cold sweat ran down his pale face. "I can't," he murmured, starting to slip back. "Leave me here." "No!" Lily cried, tears running down her dirty face. "Please, don't give up!" Dave felt something snap in his left arm. The pain was so intense that for a moment his vision blurred. But instead of letting go, he tightened his grip on Sam even more. "Listen here," he said through clenched teeth, his voice trembling with pain. "This girl could be looking for food right now, but she chose to try to help you. I'm not going to let her sacrifice be in vain." With a superhuman effort, Dave pulled again. This time, something definitely broke in his arm. The crack was audible, making Lily scream in fright, but the old construction worker didn't stop. Tears of pain ran down his wrinkled face as he continued pulling, ignoring the arm now clearly dislocated. "Your arm!" Lily cried, horrified. "It's broken!" "Doesn't matter," Dave replied, his voice punctuated by pain. "Keep pushing, girl. Don't stop now." Desperation gave Sam extra strength. Seeing the sacrifice of that elderly man, something inside him refused to give up. With a groan of pain, he forced his legs to cooperate, pushing himself up while Dave pulled and Lily pushed. Inch by inch, they began to rise. Sweat poured from all of them, mixed with tears and dirt. Dave felt like he was going to faint at any moment, but he didn't loosen his grip. Lily, despite her thin arms trembling with exhaustion, continued pushing. When they finally reached the edge of the hole, Dave was as pale as paper. His left arm hung at an odd angle, swollen and starting to turn purple, but still, using only his right arm, he helped pull Sam out completely. The three collapsed on the ground, gasping for air. Sam was semi-conscious, his breathing labored and irregular. Dave had leaned against a piece of wall, holding his broken arm to his chest, trembling in pain. Lily looked from one to the other in a panic. Need hospital, she mumbled, looking around desperately. But the street was deserted. Who would stop to help three dirty and ragged people in the middle of the night? Go, Dave said, between gasps of pain. Run and get help. I'll stay with him. Lily hesitated. She was afraid to leave them alone, but she knew she needed to do something. With one last worried look, she ran down the street shouting for help. Her small voice echoed between the buildings, but the few people who passed averted their gaze, quickening their pace. Please, she shouted, tears blurring her vision. There are injured people, please. On the sidewalk, Dave struggled to stay conscious. The pain in his arm was unbearable, and black spots danced in his vision. But he kept his eyes fixed on Sam, making sure he was still breathing. Hang in there, he murmured to the unconscious man. That girl isn't going to give up on you, and neither am I. Time seemed to drag on. With each passing minute, Dave felt his strength ebbing away. The cold of the night penetrated his bones, making him tremble uncontrollably. But he refused to close his eyes, fearing that if he fell asleep, he wouldn't wake up again. Suddenly, he heard the sound of tires screeching. A bright light illuminated the sidewalk where they were, and agitated voices approached. Through his blurred vision, Dave saw Lily running back, accompanied by a man in uniform. It's here, she shouted, pointing. Please, help them. The bus driver that Lily had managed to convince to stop was already on the phone, calling an ambulance. As he approached closer, and the light better illuminated Sam's face, his eyes widened in recognition. Good heavens, he murmured. Isn't that the businessman who's been missing? The owner of... But Dave didn't hear the rest. The pain and exhaustion finally overcame him, and everything went dark. The last thing he felt was Lily's small hand holding his as sirens began to sound in the distance. The public hospital was crowded that night. The stretchers with Sam and Dave were quickly taken into the emergency room, leaving Lily standing at the entrance, small and alone. A nurse, noticing her dirty clothes and bare feet, approached with a stern expression. You can't stay here, girl. This is no place for street kids, she said, gesturing for Lily to move away from the door. But I came with them, Lily protested, pointing in the direction where the two men had disappeared. The mister was very sick, and Mr. Dave broke his arm to save him. The nurse sighed impatiently. Look, they're being taken care of, okay? Now go away before I call security. Lily felt the tears returning to her eyes, but she swallowed them. On the streets, she had learned that crying didn't help anything. She took a few steps back, moving away from the entrance. But she didn't leave. She hid behind a pillar, determined to wait for news. Inside the hospital, the situation was serious. Sam was immediately taken for tests, his precarious state of health alarming the medical team. Dave, despite the excruciating pain in his arm, insisted on asking about the man they had rescued. How is he? He asked for the third time to the nurse who was bandaging his arm. Were you able to identify him? You need to worry about your own condition now, she replied, adjusting the cast. Your arm has a serious fracture. At your age, you'll need plenty of rest to recover. Dave shook his head, annoyed with his own fragility. In other times, when he worked in construction, his arms were strong enough to carry bags of cement all day. Now, he could barely help someone without breaking down completely. The hours dragged on. Outside, Lily struggled against sleep and hunger. She had found a piece of cardboard and wrapped herself in it to ward off the cold, but her stomach ached. Still, she refused to leave without knowing if the two men would be okay. Around 3 a.m, a different commotion began in the hospital. Doctors ran from one side to the other, and Lily heard fragments of conversations that left her even more worried. Cancer in advanced stage. Dehydrated and malnourished. We need to contact the family. The movement increased when an elegant woman arrived, accompanied by several men in suits. Lily saw them rushing into the hospital, and something in the way everyone treated them with deference made her realize that they must be important people. Inside the hospital, the news spread quickly. The patient was not just any homeless person. It was Sam Martin, the businessman who had disappeared months ago after the death of his wife. His family was desperately looking for him, fearing he had done something crazy. "Where did you find him?" asked Audrey, his sister, to the doctors. Her eyes were red from crying so much. Why was he in that state? He was brought in by an elderly, a man, and the doctor consulted his notes, frowning. Apparently there was also a child, but she didn't stay at the hospital. Audrey ran her hands over her face, trying to absorb all of this. Her brother, who had always been a strong and determined man, was now fighting for his life in a hospital bed. The cancer that he had hidden from everyone had spread, and his body was extremely weakened. In the room next door, Dave received a visit from a social worker. Since he had no family or health insurance, he would need to be transferred to a more distant public hospital as soon as his condition allowed. "Do you have somewhere to stay after discharge?" she asked, preparing to fill out a form. Dave hesitated. He had lost his small rooming house months ago when his retirement check was late. Since then, he had been living temporarily in the homes of acquaintances, never staying too long in the same place so as not to bother them. "I'll manage," he replied simply. His biggest concern wasn't himself. The girl, the one who helped us. "Does anyone know about her?" The social worker frowned. "What girl?" "A small, skinny one. She was the one who found the man first, the one who got help. You can't have sent her away like that." But they had. Lily continued her solitary vigil outside, hiding whenever a security guard passed. She was exhausted and cold, but something inside her prevented her from giving up. She needed to know if they would be okay. When the sun began to rise, bringing a new cold winter day, the activity in the hospital increased. More cars arrived, more important people coming and going. Lily watched everything from her hiding place, feeling smaller and more invisible. It was then that she overheard a conversation that made her heart clench. Two nurses were talking near the entrance, unaware of her presence. "The old guy with the broken arm is being transferred today," said one of them. "Looks like he has nowhere to go afterward." "And the other one, the businessman?" "Ah, he's in bad shape. The cancer has spread too much. The doctors don't think he'll last long." Lily felt the tears running down her dirty face. It wasn't fair. They had fought so hard to save Sam, and now he was going to die anyway? And Mr. Dave, who had hurt his arm to help, was going to be sent away with nowhere to stay. Without thinking twice, the girl came out of her hiding place and ran into the hospital. She ignored the shouts of the receptionist, dodged a security, a guard, and continued running through the corridors, desperately searching for the rooms where they might be. "Hey, get back here!" someone shouted behind her. But Lily was fast. Years on the streets had taught her how to escape pursuers. She turned down one corridor, then another, until she finally saw, through a half-open door, the familiar face of Dave. She quickly entered the room, closing the door behind her. The old construction worker was lying in bed, his casted arm resting on his chest. When he saw her, his tired eyes lit up. "Lily, you stayed here all this time." Lily ran to him, the words tumbling out. "They're going to send you away. And the other Mr. Sam, he's very sick. They said he's going to... She couldn't finish the sentence. Dave extended his good arm and pulled her close, letting her finally cry out all the exhaustion and fear of that endless night. "Easy, little one," he murmured, his own voice choked up. "Sometimes things need to get worse before they get better." But before he could say anything more, the door to the room opened. A security guard entered, followed by the receptionist nurse and an elegant woman that Lily recognized. It was the same one who had arrived during the night, with the men in suits. "Is this the girl?" asked Audrey, looking steadily at Lily. "The one who found my brother?" Lily instinctively cowered against Dave, frightened by all those people looking at her. Audrey took a step forward, her expression softening as she realized the girl's fear. "You don't have to be afraid," she said, her voice gentle. "I just want to talk. My brother, he's asking for you." Dave put his good hand on Lily's shoulder, giving her courage. "Go on, little one. I'll be waiting for you here." With hesitant steps, Lily followed Audrey through the corridors of the hospital. They passed several doors until they reached a different wing, quieter and with private rooms. Before entering, Audrey knelt down to be at Lily's height. "My brother is very weak," she explained, "but since he woke up, he only talks about thanking the girl who found him. You were very brave." Lily didn't answer. She didn't feel brave. She was scared, hungry, and so tired that she could barely stand. Audrey noticed her condition and frowned with concern. "When was the last time you had something to eat?" The girl shrugged. She had lost count of the hours since she had found Sam in the hole. Audrey gestured to a passing nurse. "Please bring her something to eat, and water too." Minutes later, Lily was sitting in an armchair next to Sam's bed, eating a sandwich while watching the man she had helped save. He was even paler under the fluorescent light of the hospital, connected to various machines that beeped constantly. "So it was you," he said finally, his voice just a whisper. "My barefoot guardian angel." Lily swallowed the last piece of the sandwich, not knowing what to answer. Sam continued, "Do you know why I was in that hole? Because I gave up. I gave up fighting on living. When I found out about the cancer and lost my wife, I thought there was no point in anything anymore." He paused, breathing with difficulty. Audrey approached to help him with a glass of water. But then a child who had nothing, who was starving, decided that my life was worth saving. And an old man who could barely walk broke his own arm to help me. Tears were running down Sam's face now. "How can I give up after that? What right do I have to throw away what you fought so hard to save?" Audrey was also crying, holding her brother's hand. Lily remained silent, but her own tears began to fall. "Where do you live, little one?" Sam asked. Lily lowered her eyes. "Anywhere. Sometimes under the overpass, sometimes near the market." The businessman closed his eyes tightly, as if he felt pain. "And your parents?" "I never knew my father. My mother died a long time ago." Audrey covered her mouth with her hand, stifling a sob. Sam opened his eyes again, and there was in them a determination that wasn't there before. "This ends today," he declared. "Audrey, I want you to take care of everything. Documents, social worker, whatever is needed. This girl is not going back to the streets." Lily widened her eyes, not quite understanding what was happening. Audrey was already on the phone, making calls. People entered and left the room, talking in low voices. But what about Mr. Dave?" Lily asked, remembering. "The old construction worker. He also has nowhere to go." Sam smiled weakly. "Neither does he. Audrey, include Mr. Dave in the arrangements. I want both of them well taken care of." The next few hours were a whirlwind for Lily. Social workers came to talk to her, asking questions about her past. Doctors examined her health, nurses brought clean clothes and took her to shower. When she returned to Sam's room, she was unrecognizable. Her dark hair, previously tangled, was now clean and combed. The new clothes made her look like an ordinary child, no longer a homeless girl. But the most impressive transformation was in her eyes. For the first time in a long time, there was hope in them. In the room next door, Dave received news that he could hardly believe he would no longer be transferred. Sam had ordered that he receive the best possible treatment right there, and after discharge he would have a place to live. "But why?" he asked the social worker, confused. "He doesn't even know me well." "Mr. Martin said that he owes his life to you," she replied, "and that there is no money in the world that can pay for what you and the girl did for him." At night, when the hospital finally quieted down, Lily was allowed to visit Dave again. She found the old construction worker sitting on the bed, looking out the window with a pensive expression. "Mr. Dave," she called softly. "Are you okay?" He turned to her and his eyes filled with tears as he saw her so different. "Look at you, girl. Now you really look like a princess." Lily ran to him and hugged him carefully so as not to hurt his arm. "They said I'll be able to stay here, and you too. No more sleeping on the streets." Dave stroked her hair with his good hand. "Yeah, it seems our friend Sam is a man of his word, but you know that he's very sick, don't you?" The joy on Lily's face diminished slightly. "I know, I heard the doctors talking. But now he's going to fight, right? He promised." "Yes, little one, now he's going to fight. And do you know why? Because you showed him that life is always worth it." But while Lily finally slept, curled up in a comfortable armchair in Dave's room, Sam's condition worsened. Doctors entered and left his room with worried expressions, and Audrey didn't leave his side. "You need to hold on," she whispered to her brother. "That girl needs you. They both need you." Sam, even sedated, seemed to fight with all his strength. His body was weak, devastated by cancer, but there was on his face an expression of determination that impressed the doctors. "I've never seen anything like it," one of them commented to Audrey. "It's as if he's refusing to leave, as if something stronger than the disease is keeping him here." The night progressed, and with it Sam's silent battle against death. In her room, Lily stirred restlessly in her sleep, as if she felt even in her dreams that the fate of the people who had changed her life was still hanging by a thread. The dawn dragged on in the hospital as Sam's condition deteriorated rapidly. The doctors had increased the dosage of medication, but his body wasn't responding as expected. Audrey, sitting beside her brother's bed, held his hand tightly, as if she could keep him alive with her will alone. "You can't give up now," she whispered, "not after giving hope to that girl." In the room next door, Lily woke up startled. Something in her heart told her that something wasn't right. She looked at Dave, who was sleeping in his hospital bed, his casted arm resting on his chest. Carefully, so as not to wake him, she left the room silently. The hallway was quiet at that hour, only the distant sound of machines and hurried footsteps of nurses breaking the silence. Lily walked barefoot to Sam's room, her heart beating faster and faster as she approached. Through the crack in the door, she saw Audrey crying, while doctors moved quickly around the bed. The machines were making different noises now, more urgent and frightening. Pressure dropping. "We need more. Call the team for..." Lily felt her legs weaken. She couldn't lose Sam. Not now that she had finally found someone who cared about her. Without thinking twice, she pushed the door open and entered the room. "Who let this girl in here?" asked one of the doctors, annoyed. "Get her out of here." But before anyone could touch her, Lily ran to the bed. Tears ran down her face as she held Sam's other hand. "Please," she begged, her small voice choked with tears. "You promised you would fight. You promised you wouldn't give up." Audrey made a move to take Lily away, but something stopped her. The machines, which had been beeping frantically, began to show a slight change. Sam's pressure, which was dropping, stabilized. "This is interesting," murmured one of the doctors, observing the monitors. Sam opened his eyes slightly, focusing his gaze on Lily. A small smile appeared on his pale lips. "My guardian angel," he whispered with difficulty. "Vital signs are improving," announced a nurse, surprised. "It's as if he's fighting back," completed the doctor, checking the machines again. Audrey watched the scene with a mixture of astonishment and emotion. The presence of that little street girl had done something that all of modern medicine couldn't. It had given Sam a reason to keep fighting. The next few hours were tense, but Sam remained stable. Lily refused to leave his side, even when the nurses insisted that she needed to rest. Audrey brought an armchair so that she could be more comfortable, and even a blanket. When the sun began to rise, Dave appeared at the door of the room, supported by a nurse. His face showed concern as he saw all the machines connected to Sam. "How is he?" he asked, his voice hoarse with sleep. "Fighting," replied Audrey, offering a tired smile. "Thanks to her." Dave looked at Lily, who had finally fallen asleep in the armchair, her small hand still firmly holding Sam's. His eyes filled with tears as he saw that scene. "You know," he said, sitting down in a nearby chair, "I've spent my whole life building buildings for other people to live in. I never had a real family, and now, at the end of my life, I find a family in the most unlikely places." Audrey listened attentively as the old construction worker continued. "That girl, she has something special. It's not just courage or kindness. It's like she can see beyond appearances, beyond what the world tries to make us believe." "How so?" asked Audrey, intrigued. "Well, when she saw me that night, she didn't see a useless old man with a cane. She saw someone who could help. When she found your brother, she didn't see a rich or poor man. She just saw someone needing help." Dave paused, adjusting his casted arm. "Maybe that's what your brother also saw in her. That ability to see what really matters." The morning advanced, and with it came more doctors, more tests. To everyone's surprise, the results showed a small but significant improvement in Sam's condition. "I don't want to create false hope," said the head doctor to Audrey, "but your brother is responding better to the treatment now. It's as if something had changed during the night." Lily woke up with the movement in the room. Immediately, she checked if Sam was still breathing, if he was still holding her hand. He was sleeping, but his breathing seemed less labored than the night before. "Is he going to be okay?" she asked Audrey, her voice still sleepy. Audrey hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "He's fighting, honey, and a lot of that is thanks to you. But the cancer, I heard the doctors talking. Cancer is a very strong enemy," explained Audrey, sitting down next to Lily. "But sometimes, when we have a strong enough reason to fight, we can surprise even the doctors." At that moment, Sam began to stir. His eyes opened slowly, more focused than the night before. He looked around the room, first at his sister, then at Dave, and finally at Lily. "You are still here," he said, his voice weak but clear. "Of course," replied Lily, squeezing his hand. "I promised I wouldn't let you give up, remember?" A faint smile appeared on Sam's face. "I remember. And I also remember that I made a promise to you." He gestured for Audrey to come closer. "Have you started the preparations?" "Yes," she replied. "The lawyers are taking care of everything. The paperwork for the temporary guardianship of Lily is already in progress, and I've also arranged a suitable apartment for Mr. Dave." "Great," murmured Sam, closing his eyes for a moment. "Because now I have to get better. I have a family to take care of." Silent tears streamed down the faces of everyone in the room. Lily, who had never felt what it was like to have a real family, felt her heart so full that it felt like it was going to explode. But Sam's battle was far from over. Although he was more stable, the cancer was still there, silent and relentless. And the next few hours would be crucial to determining whether his will to live would be stronger than the disease that consumed him. The days that followed in the hospital were a roller coaster of emotions. Sam's condition fluctuated constantly. There were moments of improvement that brought hope to everyone, followed by relapses that left the doctors worried. Lily practically didn't leave the hospital, dividing her time between Sam's room and Dave's. Audrey had provided new clothes for the girl and ensured that she received all the meals. The nurses, who initially looked at her with suspicion, now melted with her dedication and kindness. Lily helped as she could, bringing water to Sam, adjusting his pillow, or simply holding his hand when he seemed more tired. On a particularly difficult afternoon, while Sam slept after a series of exhaustive tests, Audrey found Lily curled up in her usual armchair, crying silently. "What's wrong, honey?" she asked, sitting down next to the girl. Lily tried to wipe away the tears quickly, but they kept falling. It's just that I've never had anything in my life. I've always been alone, and now that I've found people who care about me." Her voice failed, and Audrey hugged her, letting her cry on her shoulder. "You're afraid of losing everything again, aren't you?" The girl nodded, sobbing. Sam, will I have to go back to the streets?" "No," replied Audrey firmly, holding Lily's face between her hands. "Listen carefully. No matter what happens, you're not going back to the streets. My brother has already prepared everything. You and Mr. Dave are under our protection now." On the other side of the room, Sam had woken up and was listening to the conversation, his half-closed eyes shining with contained tears. He waited for Audrey to leave to call Lily. "Come here, little one," he said, his voice weak but determined. When she approached, he continued, "Do you know why I'm fighting so hard against this disease?" Lily shook her head negatively. "Because I want to see you grow up. I want to see you go to school, have a decent life, realize your dreams. You gave me back the will to live when I had already given up. Now it's my turn to give you a chance to really live." In the room next door, Dave also fought his own battles. His arm was recovering well, but the doctors had discovered other health problems during the exams. High blood pressure, the beginning of diabetes, heart problems that needed attention. "You need to take better care of yourself," said the doctor, adjusting his medications. "Have you been taking your medication properly?" Dave lowered his eyes, ashamed. How could he say that living on the streets, he could barely feed himself, let alone buy medicine? But now it was different. Audrey had ensured that he would have everything he needed: a home, proper nutrition, medical care. "You know what hurts me the most?" he confided to Audrey one night. "Seeing that girl suffering. She's so small and has already known so much sadness in her life. And now that she's finally found a little happiness." "She found more than happiness," replied Audrey, helping him settle better in bed. "She found a family. You are also part of it now." The days turned into weeks. The routine of the hospital had been established. Lily spent the mornings with Sam, helping him with the physical therapy that the doctors had prescribed. In the afternoon, she would go to Dave's room, where he would tell her stories of his construction days, teaching her about different types of materials and tools. Audrey had hired a private tutor who came to the hospital 3 times a week to start teaching Lily to read and write. The girl proved to be an eager student, absorbing each new piece of knowledge with enthusiasm. In her spare time, she practiced her newly learned writing by making cards for Sam and Dave. But not everything was happy moments. On a particularly cold early morning, Sam had a sudden relapse. His breathing became difficult, and the doctors rushed to stabilize him. Lily, awakened by the commotion, watched everything from the door of the room, her small body trembling with fear. "Everything will be okay," she whispered to herself like a mantra. "He promised to fight. He promised." Audrey found the girl. There, hours later, still standing in the same place, refusing to leave until she was sure that Sam was out of danger. When the doctors finally managed to stabilize him, Lily was exhausted, but didn't want to go rest. "I need to stay," she insisted, her eyes heavy with sleep. "What if he needs me?" It was Dave who managed to convince her to sleep a little. "You know, little one, sometimes the best way to help someone is by taking care of ourselves first. If you get sick, how will you be able to take care of him?" The old construction worker's simple wisdom reached Lily. She agreed to rest, but only after Dave promised to wake her up if there was any change in Sam's condition. Meanwhile, in the hospital hallways, Audrey talked to the doctors about her brother's condition. The cancer was advanced, but something inexplicable was happening. Even in the most critical moments, when everything indicated that he wouldn't resist, Sam found the strength to recover. "It's as if he refuses to leave," commented one of the doctors. "I've never seen anything like it in all my years of practice. It's as if something stronger than the disease itself is keeping him alive." Audrey knew exactly what that something was. It was love. The love for that little girl who had found him at the bottom of the hole, both literally and figuratively. It was the responsibility he felt for Dave, who had sacrificed his arm to save him. It was the will to make a difference in the lives of those people that the universe had placed in his path. On an especially difficult afternoon, when the pain was stronger than usual, Sam called Audrey closer. "I need you to promise me something," he said, his voice almost a whisper. "Anything, my brother. If I can't, if I'm not strong enough, promise that you will take care of them. Lily, Dave, they need someone." Audrey held his hand tightly. "You'll make it. You'll see your family grow and be happy." But Sam hadn't finished. "And there's one more thing. I want you to use part of my fortune to create a foundation to help other children like Lily, other elderly people like Dave, people that society has forgotten." Tears ran freely down Audrey's face now. "You're going to do this personally. You're going to see all the lives that you transform." At that moment, as if she had heard the conversation, Lily entered the room carrying a drawing she had made. A family of stick figures, all holding hands, with a large smiling sun in the corner of the paper. "Look, I made it for you," she said proudly. "It's us, you, me, Audrey and Dave, a real family." Sam took the drawing with trembling hands, his watery eyes fixed on that innocent representation of love and hope. And at that moment, he made a silent promise to himself. He would live to see that drawing become reality. A month had passed since the night Lily found Sam in the hole. Autumn was beginning to give way to winter, and the temperatures were falling more and more in Chicago. At the hospital, the routine followed its course, but with subtle changes that brought hope to everyone. Dave was almost being discharged. His arm, although still in a cast, was recovering well, and the doctors had managed to control his other health problems with proper medication. Audrey had already provided a furnished apartment for him in a building near the hospital, with an elevator and all the necessary structure for an elderly man. "I don't deserve so much," he said emotionally when Audrey showed him photos of the apartment. "It's too nice for an old man like me." "You deserve this and much more," she replied firmly. "You saved my brother's life. It's the least we can do." But the biggest transformation was visible in Lily. The girl who previously lived on the streets was now always clean and well-dressed, her hair always carefully combed by Audrey or the nurses. Her private lessons were progressing rapidly. She could already read simple words and write her own name. Every morning, Lily arrived early at Sam's room, carrying her notebooks and colored pencils. While he had his treatments, she studied, occasionally showing her progress to him with pride. "Look, I managed to write hospital today," she exclaimed, showing off her still uneven but legible handwriting. Sam, even on the days when the pain was stronger, always found the energy to praise her efforts. "Soon you'll be writing better than me," he would say, making her smile. One afternoon, while Lily was in her lesson, Audrey found her brother crying silently in his room. "What's wrong?" she asked, alarmed. "Are you feeling more pain?" Sam shook his head. "It's not that. I was thinking, how could I have been so selfish? When I lost Maria and found out about the cancer, I thought my life was over. I gave in, I gave up. And there were so many people needing help, so many Lilies and Daves around the world." Audrey held his hand. "Don't blame yourself. You were suffering. But now I see that suffering blinds us," he continued. "It makes us forget that there is always something we can do for others. That girl, she had nothing, absolutely nothing, and yet her first instinct was to help a stranger." At that moment, they were interrupted by a commotion in the hallway. It was Lily, returning from her lesson, but something was wrong. The girl was running, crying, and hid under Sam's bed before anyone could stop her. "Lily!" called Audrey, worried. "What happened?" From her hiding place, Lily's small voice came out choked. "I don't want to leave here. I don't want them to take me." Sam and Audrey exchanged worried glances. Soon after, the private tutor entered the room, followed by a social worker that Audrey didn't know. "I'm sorry," said the tutor, distressed. "I shouldn't have mentioned it, but what is happening?" asked Audrey, her tone making it clear that she demanded explanations. The social worker took a step forward. "Miss Audrey, I'm from Child Protective Services. We came because we received a report about the minor's irregular situation." "What irregular situation?" Sam's voice, even weak, carried authority. "All the papers are being processed." "Yes, Mr. Martin, but the process is complex. The girl would need to be in a suitable shelter while the documentation is finalized. She can't be living in a hospital." A loud sob came from under the bed. Audrey knelt down, trying to reach Lily. "No one is going to take you, honey, I promise." "Unfortunately, Ma'am," continued the social worker, "the law is clear. Without definitive guardianship, the minor needs to be in state custody." At that moment, Dave appeared in the doorway, leaning on his cane. He had heard the commotion and come to see what was happening. "Excuse me," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Can I make a suggestion?" Everyone turned to him, surprised. Dave continued, "This girl has spent her life on the streets. No one from the state cared about her before. Now that she has finally found people who want to take care of her, who are giving her education, affection, a chance at a future, you want to snatch her away from here?" The social worker seemed uncomfortable. "Sir, I understand your point, but there are procedures." "Procedures?" Dave's voice rose a little. "I broke my arm to save a man I didn't know. This girl risked everything to help someone the world had abandoned. And you're talking about procedures?" Audrey seized the moment. "Please give us a few days. I promise that by the end of the week all the necessary documents will be ready. Don't do this to her." The social worker looked at Lily, who was still, hidden, crying, and then at Sam in the hospital bed, clearly weakened but with a look of fierce determination. "Okay," she conceded finally. "You have until Friday. But if the documentation isn't complete by then, it will be, guaranteed." Audrey already picking up the phone to call the lawyers. When the social worker and the tutor left, Lily finally came out of her hiding place. Her little face was stained with tears, and she was trembling. "I don't want to go to the shelter," she sobbed. "I want to stay with you. You are my family." Sam extended his arms to her, ignoring the pain that the movement caused. Lily ran into his arms, burying her face in his chest. "No one is going to take you from us," he promised, stroking her hair. "You will never be alone again." Dave approached, sitting heavily in a chair. "It's true, little one. Now we are a real family. A bit crooked, a bit broken, but a family." Audrey was already on the phone, giving urgent orders. It didn't matter how much it cost or what favors she needed to call in. She would ensure that all the documents were ready before the deadline. But while everyone mobilized to resolve the situation, Sam felt his body weakening. The effort of holding Lily, the tension of the moment, everything had taken its toll. His breathing began to become more difficult, and a cold sweat broke out. On his forehead, Lily noticed it first. She raised her head and saw the paleness on his face. "Uncle Sam," she called, scared. "Does it hurt?" He tried to smile, but his effort was visible. "I just need to rest a little, my angel." Audrey quickly called the doctors while Dave took Lily out of the room. The girl resisted. "No, I want to stay with him." "He needs to be taken care of." "Now, little one," explained Dave gently, "let's let the doctors do their work." In the hallway, Lily clung to Dave, crying, "I can't lose him too, Mr. Dave. I can't lose my family again." The old construction worker hugged her with his good arm, feeling his own heart clench. "Have faith, girl. Your Uncle Sam is strong. He's going to fight, you'll see." But while trying to comfort Lily, Dave watched the doctor's movements with concern. Sam's battle was far from over, and now he needed to be stronger than ever. Not only for his own sake, but for that whole unlikely family that fate had brought together. The hours that followed were the most distressing since Lily found Sam on that fateful night. The doctors entered and left the room constantly, their serious expressions revealing nothing good. Audrey had locked herself in a room with the lawyers, working frantically to resolve Lily's documentation before it was too late. Dave tried to keep Lily distracted in his room, telling stories of his youth, but the girl barely paid attention. Her eyes were always fixed on the door, waiting for news. Her small hands squeezed tightly the drawing of the family that she had made for Sam. "What if he—" she began for the third time, her voice trembling. "Don't think about that," interrupted Dave gently. "Remember what Audrey said? Your uncle. Sam is strong, he's fighting." But even Dave, with all his life experience, felt the weight of worry. He had seen the paleness on Sam's face, the effort he was making to breathe. Cancer was a relentless enemy, and that scare could have been too much for his already weakened body. In the late afternoon, Audrey finally emerged from the meeting with the lawyers. She looked exhausted, but there was a glint of determination in her eyes. "The documents will be ready tomorrow," she announced. "We managed to expedite everything. No one is going to take you from us, Lily." The girl barely managed to smile. "How is Uncle Sam?" Audrey hesitated for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "He's resting now. The doctors are doing everything they can." "I want to see him," asked Lily, her voice small but determined. "Not now, honey. He needs—" "Please." Lily's plea was heartbreaking. What if he leaves without me being able to say—" She couldn't finish the sentence. The tears she had held back all day finally overflowed. Audrey hugged her tight, feeling her small body tremble with sobs. "Okay," she conceded finally, "but only for a little bit, and you need to be very quiet." When they entered the room, Sam was sleeping, connected to even more machines than before. His breathing was shallow and difficult, even with the help of oxygen. Lily approached the bed on tiptoe, as if she feared waking him. Carefully, she placed her drawing of the family on the table next to the bed. Then she stood on her tiptoes and whispered in Sam's ear, "You can't go yet, Uncle. Promise you won't?" To everyone's surprise, Sam's eyes opened slightly. They focused on Lily with difficulty, but there was a glimmer of recognition in them. "My angel," he whispered, his voice almost inaudible. "Don't cry." "Promise," she insisted, holding his hand tightly. A small smile appeared on Sam's pale lips. "I promise that I will fight." It was all he could say before falling asleep again. But something had changed. The machines that monitored his vital signs showed a slight improvement. It was as if Lily's presence, once again, had given him the strength to continue. Night fell on the hospital, but no one could sleep properly. Audrey alternated between her brother's room and the endless calls with lawyers and authorities. Dave, even needing to rest for his own recovery, refused to sleep while Lily was awake. "You need to rest," insisted a nurse, seeing how pale he was with fatigue. "I'll rest when I'm sure my family is okay," he replied simply. Family. The word had a different weight now. It was no longer just an expression. It was a real bond, forged through pain, fear, and hope. A family that fate had brought together in the most unlikely way possible. Around midnight, something unexpected happened. Lily, who had finally fallen asleep in the armchair in Dave's room, woke up startled. "Uncle Sam!" she cried, jumping to her feet. "He's calling!" Dave and Audrey, who were talking in low voices in the hallway, ran to see what was happening. But before they could reach her, Lily had already run to Sam's room, and indeed he was awake. More than that, he was sitting in bed, propped up on pillows, with a color in his face that he hadn't had in days. "Lily!" he called again, his voice stronger than in recent weeks. "Come here, my angel." The girl approached, her eyes wide with surprise and hope. Audrey and Dave stopped at the door, equally astonished by the change. How are you feeling?" asked Lily timidly. "Like I've slept for a month," replied Sam, and there was a playful tone in his voice that no one had heard in a long time. "But mostly I feel alive." The doctors were called urgently to examine Sam. No one could explain exactly what had happened, but the test showed a significant improvement in his condition. "It's as if your body has found a new reservoir of strength," commented the head doctor, checking the results. "The cancer markers are still high, but there is a better response to treatment now." Audrey cried with joy, while Dave tried to disguise his own tears. But it was on Lily's face that the most remarkable transformation was seen. Her smile lit up the entire room. "I knew it!" she exclaimed, jumping for joy. "I knew you would make it, Uncle." Sam extended his arms to her, and this time the movement didn't seem to cause so much pain. When Lily snuggled into his embrace, he said something that made everyone's heart warm. "How could I leave? I have a family to take care of now." But not everything was joy. Even with Sam's inexplicable improvement, the doctors warned that the road would be long and difficult. The cancer was still there, silent and dangerous, and there was also the question of Lily's documentation. Even with all of Audrey's effort, there were still obstacles to overcome. "Tomorrow is the deadline," reminded Audrey, her voice betraying her concern. "If we don't make it, we will make it," interrupted Sam firmly. "We didn't come this far to give up now." Lily, although trying to appear strong, couldn't completely hide her fear. That unlikely family had become her whole world. The idea of losing them was more frightening than all the nights she had spent alone on the streets. Dave, noticing her distress, called her closer. "You know, little one, in construction I learned one thing. Sometimes what seems impossible to build ends up becoming the strongest structure of all." "How so?" she asked, curious. "It's like our family. No one would bet that a broken old man, a sick man, and a street girl could form something so special. But here we are, stronger together than apart." That night, while the hospital gradually quieted down, a different energy lingered in the air. It was as if the love of that unlikely family had created a force of its own, capable of defying even the laws of medicine. But fate still had surprises in store for all of them. The next day would be decisive, not only for Lily's future, but for that family that had been born from the most improbable circumstances. The morning dawned grey and cold, as if the sky itself shared the apprehension that hung over the hospital. It was the day of the deadline. Either Lily's documentation would be complete, or she would be taken to a shelter. Audrey had spent the entire night in her makeshift office at the hospital, making calls, sending emails, moving mountains to ensure that everything was in order. Lily woke up early, even before the nurses started their morning rounds. She had slept in Sam's room, curled up in her armchair, already so familiar. Her first impulse was to check if he was still breathing, a habit she had developed in recent weeks. To her relief, Sam was not only breathing but was already awake, watching her with a serene smile. "Good morning, my angel," he said, his voice stronger than in recent days. "Did you sleep well?" Lily nodded, but her big eyes betrayed her concern. "What time is the lady from Child Protective Services coming?" "Don't think about that now," replied Sam, reaching out his hand to her. "Come here. I want to tell you a story." The girl approached the bed, curious. Sam rarely talked about his past. "Did you know that I was very lonely too? When I was young, I lost my parents very early. I thought I would never have a family again. I built a company, made a fortune, but something was always missing." He paused, his eyes lost in distant memories. "Then I met Maria, my wife. She showed me that family isn't just a matter of blood, it's a matter of love. We planned to have children, but we couldn't, and when she was gone—" His voice faltered for a moment. "When she was gone, I thought I was alone again." Lily held his hand tightly, as if she wanted to protect him from the sadness of those memories. "But do you know what happened?" he continued with a small smile. "The universe had other plans. It sent me a guardian angel with bare feet and a heart bigger than the world." Tears began to run down Lily's face. "I don't want to leave, Uncle. I don't want to lose my family again." At that moment, Dave appeared in the doorway, leaning on his cane. His arm was still in a cast, but he could move better. "Who said you're going to lose?" he asked, entering the room. "Real family doesn't separate so easily." Audrey arrived soon after, carrying a folder full of documents. She looked exhausted, but there was a glint of triumph in her eyes. "I did it," she announced, showing the papers. "All the necessary documents, all the authorizations, everything signed and notarized. Now all that's missing is the social worker's approval." The relief was momentary, as they soon heard voices in the hallway. The social worker had arrived, accompanied by a court officer from Child Protective Services. Lily clung to Sam's hand, trembling. "Good morning," said the social worker, entering the room. Her face was serious, professional. "We came to check on the miner's situation." Audrey immediately presented the folder with the documents. "Everything is here. Lily's birth certificate that we managed to recover, documentation of the temporary guardianship process, proof of income and residence, certificates of good standing, everything as requested." The social worker and the officer began to examine the documents meticulously. The silence in the room was heavy, broken only by the constant beeping of medical equipment. "The documents seem to be in order," said the officer finally. "But we need to assess whether this is really the best environment for the minor. A hospital is not a place for a child." "Please," Sam's voice, although weak, carried a natural authority. "Let me explain our situation." He then told the whole story, how Lily had found him, how she and Dave risked everything to save him, how that unlikely group had transformed into a family. "I know we are not conventional," he admitted, "but that girl taught me that family doesn't need to follow a specific model. She gave me back the will to live when I had already given up. How can I not reciprocate by giving her the home she has always deserved?" The social worker seemed touched, but the officer maintained her neutral expression. "What about education? Stability?" "She is already having private lessons here," intervened Audrey. "As soon as my brother is discharged, we already have a house prepared for everyone. Lily will have her own room, attend a good school. She will have everything she needs. And more importantly," added Dave, "she will have love. Something that no shelter in the world can guarantee." The court officer turned to Lily. "And you, little one, what do you want?" Lily took a deep breath, gathering all her courage. "I never had anything in my life. I slept on the street. I went hungry. No one cared about me. But here," her voice trembled a little, Here I have a family. Uncle Sam is like a father to me. Audrey teaches me things, hugs me when I'm scared. Dave tells me stories and makes me laugh. Tears ran down her face as she continued, "Please don't take them away from me. I promise to study hard, be good, do everything right. Just don't send me away." The silence that followed seemed endless. The social worker and the officer exchanged glances, consulted the documents again, whispered to each other. Finally, the officer approached Lily. "You know, little one, our job is to ensure that all children are in a safe and loving environment," she began. "Sometimes that means making difficult decisions." Everyone's heart seemed to have stopped beating, waiting for the verdict. "But in this case," continued the officer, a small smile appearing on her lips, "I think it would be much more harmful to separate this family than to keep it together." The explosion of joy in the room was immediate. Lily jumped into the officer's arms, hugging her tightly. Audrey began to cry with relief, while Dave tried to disguise his own tears. And Sam smiled like he hadn't smiled in months. "Of course, there are still procedures to be followed," warned the social worker. "Regular follow-up visits, reports." "We'll do everything that's necessary," guaranteed Audrey, already starting to take notes. But while the adults discussed the bureaucratic details, Lily had returned to Sam's side. She climbed onto the bed carefully and snuggled into his arms. "Now, is it forever?" she asked softly. "Forever," he confirmed, kissing her forehead. "Now, nothing will separate us anymore." The rest of the day was of contained celebration at the hospital. The nurses, who had already become attached to Lily, brought a small cake to celebrate. Dave told his funniest stories, making everyone laugh. But the best part was when Audrey brought a surprise, a small instant camera. "Let's take our first official family photo," she announced. Everyone arranged themselves around Sam's bed. Lily, in the center, with her radiant smile. Dave with his casted arm, but proud. Audrey elegant as always, but with a new softness in her gaze. And Sam, still pale and connected to the machines, but with a light in his eyes that no disease could extinguish. The photo came out of the camera and began to develop slowly. It wasn't a perfect photo. There was medical equipment in the background. The hospital room wasn't the prettiest setting. But for Lily, it was the most beautiful photo in the world, because it was the photo of her family, her real family. In the weeks that followed the official guardianship of Lily, a new routine began to establish itself at the hospital. The mornings were dedicated to studies. The girl now had a complete schedule of classes, not only literacy, but also basic math and other subjects. Audrey had hired the best private tutors, determined to help her make up for lost time. Dave, who had finally been discharged, came to visit every day. His new apartment was only 2 blocks from the hospital, and he made a point of spending most of his time with his makeshift family. His arm was recovering well, and the doctors said that the cast could soon be removed. "Look, Mr. Dave," exclaimed Lily one morning, showing her notebook. "I can already write entire sentences." The old construction worker adjusted the glasses that Audrey had provided for him and examined the notebook with pride. The handwriting was still uneven, but the words were clear. "My family is the best in the world. You're getting better. Every day, little one," he praised, feeling his eyes water. "Soon you'll be writing books." But the biggest transformation was happening with Sam. To everyone's surprise and joy, his condition continued to improve. The doctors couldn't explain it completely, but the tests showed a response to treatment that no one expected. "It's as if your body has found a new purpose," commented the chief doctor during a consultation. "The cancer is still present, but it's not progressing as before." One afternoon, while Lily was in her math class, Sam called Audrey and Dave for a serious conversation. "I need to tell you something," he began, his voice stronger than in recent weeks. "I had an idea, but I need everyone's help." The two approached. Curious, Sam continued, I want to create a foundation, not only to help children like Lily, but also elderly people like you, Dave. People that society has forgotten. Audrey smiled, already imagining the possibilities. We can start with a shelter, maybe. A place that really takes care of people, not just keeps them. More than that, replied Sam, his eyes shining with enthusiasm. I want to create a complete system of support. Education for the children, medical care for the elderly, job opportunities for those who need to start over. Dave listened to everything in silence, but his hands trembled slightly. Finally, he spoke. Do you know how many old men like me are out there? People who worked their whole lives and ended up forgotten with nowhere to fall dead? That's why we need your experience, Dave, said Sam. You will be fundamental in this project. At that moment, they were interrupted by a small commotion in the hallway. It was Lily, returning from her class earlier than usual with a worried expression on her face. What's wrong, my angel? Asked Sam, immediately alerted. The girl bit her lip, hesitant. It's just, the teacher said that I will need a last name to enroll in a real school. A silence fell in the room. It was a question that no one had thought about yet. Lily had never known her father, and her mother's last name was lost in the years she had spent on the street. It was Audrey who had an idea. What if you use our last name? Everyone looked at her, surprised. Audrey continued, now more excited. Think about it, bro. You already have guardianship of her. Why not make it official once and for all? A full adoption. Lily's eyes widened. You want to be my real dad? Sam extended his arms to her, and when the girl approached, he hugged her tightly. I'm already your real dad, my angel. The paper will just confirm what we already know. But Lily still had a concern. She looked at Dave, who was watching the scene with tears in his eyes. And you? Will you also be my family on paper? The old construction worker laughed through his tears. Little one, I don't need any paper to be your grandpa. I already am since that night in the hole. That's how the preparations began for another legal process. This time, the official adoption of Lily. Audrey moved her contacts again. Lawyers were called in. Documents began to be prepared. Meanwhile, Sam continued to improve. He could already sit up in bed without help, eat alone, and even take small steps around the room. The doctors, although cautious, began to talk about hospital discharge. But you will still need a lot of follow-up, they warned. No excesses or stress. One morning, Lily arrived in the room carrying something hidden behind her back. Her face shone with excitement. I have a surprise, she announced. Close your eyes. When Sam obeyed, she placed something in his hands. You can open them. It was a card, made by hand with colored paper and decorated with drawings of flowers. Inside, with handwriting still uneven but full of affection, it was written, To my dad, Sam, with love from your daughter, Lily Martin. It was the first time she had written her new full name. Sam felt the tears run down his face as he hugged his daughter, now officially his daughter. It's the most beautiful gift I've ever received in my life, he said, his voice choked. Audrey, who had entered the room just then, also began to cry. Officially welcome to the Martin family, little one. Dave, from his usual corner, discreetly wiped his eyes with a handkerchief. Now there's only one thing missing, he said with a smile. What? Asked Lily, curious. Your dad needs to get better soon so we can all go home. A real home, with everyone together. The girl ran to him and hugged him carefully because of his casted arm. You're going to live with us too, right, Grandpa? It was the first time she had called him that, and the old construction worker's heart almost exploded with love. Of course he is, replied Sam before Dave could say anything. After all, what family would ours be without our hero with the broken arm? Everyone laughed, but it was a laughter full of emotion. That unlikely group had transformed into something special. something that not even cancer could destroy. But fate still had some surprises in store for that newly formed family. While everyone celebrated Lily's new last name, no one imagined that a surprising discovery was about to change their lives even more. The news of Sam's hospital discharge arrived on a sunny spring morning. After nearly 3 months of hospitalization, the doctors finally considered that he was strong enough to continue treatment at home. The cancer was still present, but had stabilized in a way that no one expected. "It's almost a miracle," commented the chief doctor, examining the latest tests. "I've never seen such a response to treatment in such an advanced case." Lily, who was present when the doctor gave the news, jumped for joy. "Does it mean that Daddy will be able to go home with us?" It was still strange for everyone to hear the word Daddy coming out of her mouth, but it was a good kind of strange. Sam himself felt his heart warm every time she called him that. Audrey had already prepared everything for the move. The old Martin mansion, which had been closed since Sam had disappeared, was completely renovated and adapted to receive the new family. "Come see," she called, showing photos on her cell phone. "This is your room, Lily. I decorated it all in shades of pink and lilac, with a library full of children's books." The girl's eyes sparkled as she saw the images. Never in her life had she had a room of her own, let alone one so beautiful. "And here," continued Audrey, moving to another photo, "is the suite that I prepared for you, Dave. It has a beautiful view of the garden and is all adapted for your comfort." The old construction worker, who had finally had the cast removed from his arm, shook his head in protest. "There's no need for so much, Miss Audrey. The apartment you arranged is already good enough." "Don't even think about it," interrupted Sam. "You're family now, and family stays together." The move was, scheduled for the next day. While the nurses helped Sam pack his things, Lily walked around the room, collecting all the drawings she had made during those months. She wanted to keep each one of them as a reminder of the place where her life had changed forever. That's when she found fallen behind a piece of furniture, a paper that she didn't recognize. It was an old, yellowed sheet which seemed to have fallen from some of Sam's documents. When she picked it up, her heart skipped a beat. It was a photo. A photo of a young woman smiling at the camera. And that smile was identical to hers. "Daddy," she called, her voice trembling a little. "Who is this lady in the photo?" Sam looked at the paper she was holding and his face paled slightly. Where did you find that?" "It was lying there behind," replied Lily, approaching the bed. "She looks like me, doesn't she?" Audrey, who was organizing some papers on the table, approached to see what they were talking about. When her eyes landed on the photo, she let out an exclamation of surprise. "Bro, isn't that Maria?" completed Sam, his voice almost a whisper. "My wife." Lily looked from the photo to Sam, confused. "Your wife? The one who died?" Sam nodded, taking the photo with trembling hands. "It was taken shortly before the accident. She was so happy that day." "But why does she look so much like me?" insisted Lily. A heavy silence fell in the room. Audrey and Sam exchanged meaningful glances, as if an old, painful memory was resurfacing. "Maria worked in a social project," began Sam slowly. "She helped homeless women. She always wanted to have children, but we couldn't." His voice faltered for a moment. Audrey put her hand on his shoulder, giving him strength to continue. "There was one young woman in particular whom she cared for. A very sick girl who was pregnant." Lily's heart began to beat faster. Something in her memory, very distant and hazy, began to stir. "My mother," she whispered. "My real mother." Sam nodded. "Maria helped her throughout the pregnancy. She wanted to ensure that the baby was born healthy, even in the difficult conditions in which they lived. But then the accident happened," completed Audrey softly. "Maria was on her way to another visit when When the car fell into the river, silent tears ran down Sam's face. After that, I closed myself off to the world. I didn't want to know anything more about the project, about the people she helped. It was selfish of me, I know, and now... "And now?" asked Lily, her voice small. "And now fate has brought us together in the most unlikely way possible. You have the same smile as her, you know, the same kindness in your eyes. When I saw you for the first time, even at the bottom of that hole, something in you reminded me of Maria." Lily climbed onto the bed and hugged Sam tightly. So she was like a mother to my mother?" "More than that," replied he, stroking her hair. "Maria wanted to adopt you as soon as you were born. Your biological mother knew that she couldn't raise a baby, and she trusted Maria so much. That's why fate made sure to bring us together," said Audrey, also emotional, "to complete what Maria started." At that moment, Dave entered the room, and realizing the emotional atmosphere, stopped at the door. "Did something happen?" Lily ran to him, showing the photo. "Look, Grandpa, it's Daddy's wife. She wanted to be my mother before I was even born." The old construction worker examined the photo carefully, and an understanding smile appeared on his face. "Now I understand why your dad fought so hard to stay alive. It wasn't just for you, little one. It was for her, too, to fulfill her dream." Sam wiped away his tears and gestured, calling everyone closer. "Maria always said that family is where love finds its place. She would be so happy to see how that love has brought us together, even after so much time." Audrey began to make plans. "Immediately, we're going to frame this photo and put it in the living room of the new house. This way, Maria will always be present, seeing her family grow and be happy." "And are we going to tell stories about her?" asked Lily hopefully. "I want to know everything about her." "Of course we will," promised Sam. "Every story, every special moment, because now you are the continuation of her love, my angel." That discovery brought a new meaning to the move they would make the next day. It wasn't just an improvised family coming together. It was the realization of a dream that began years ago through the love of a woman who, even not being physically present anymore, had left a legacy of kindness that fate made sure to honor. That night, the last they would spend in the hospital, Lily slept hugging Maria's photo. In her dreams, she saw a woman with her same smile, opening her arms to receive her. And for the first time, she felt that she really belonged somewhere, that her story hadn't started on the streets, but in the heart of someone who already loved her even before she existed. The day of the move dawned sunny, as if the sky itself wanted to celebrate that special moment. A private ambulance waited at the entrance of the hospital to transport Sam, while a car would take the rest of the family to the Martin mansion. Lily was electric with anticipation. She wore a new dress that Audrey had bought, especially for the occasion, and her hair was tied in 2 elaborate braids. In her hands, she carefully held Maria's photo, which she hadn't let go of since the discovery the day before. "Is everything ready?" asked Audrey, checking for the 10th time if they hadn't forgotten anything. "All the drawings, all the belongings?" "I think so," replied Lily, looking around the room that had been her home for the past few months. "But it feels strange to leave, doesn't it? This is where it all started." Sam, already sitting in the wheelchair that would take him to the ambulance, smiled tenderly. "It's not a goodbye, my angel. It's a new beginning." The nurses came to say goodbye, many of them with tears in their eyes. That unlikely family had won the hearts of everyone in the hospital. "Come visit us," insisted Lily, hugging each of them. "Promise?" "Of course we will," replied one of the oldest nurses. "We want to see you grow up happy and strong." The journey to the mansion was full of emotion. Lily, sitting between Audrey and Dave in the back seat of the car, didn't stop asking questions about the new house. The old construction worker, although trying to maintain his usual composure, also showed anxiety. "I never thought I would live in a mansion," he commented, adjusting the collar of the new shirt that Audrey had insisted he wear. "Me who spent my life building houses for others. Now you're going to have your own house," said Lily, holding his hand, "and you're going to be able to teach me everything about construction." When they finally arrived, Lily was speechless. The mansion was even more impressive than in the photos. A huge garden surrounded the house, with flowers of all colors and a fountain in the center. The facade, majestic but welcoming, had large windows and a balcony that circled the entire first floor. "Welcome to your new home," announced Audrey, opening the gates with a remote control. The ambulance with Sam arrived soon after. A team of home nurses was already waiting to help him settle in. Audrey had thought of everything, from the necessary medical equipment to adaptations in the house to facilitate his locomotion. "But let's show you your rooms," she said, guiding everyone inside. Lily's room was a dream come true. The walls, in soft shades of pink and lilac, were decorated with small lights that looked like stars, a princess bed with a canopy, a desk for studies, shelves full of children's books, and, most special, an entire wall dedicated to hanging her drawings. Is it all mine?" she asked, hardly believing it. "All yours, my princess," replied Sam, who watched from the door in his wheelchair. "And that door there, it's your closet, full of new clothes." Lily ran to hug him, taking care not to hurt him. "Thank you, Daddy. It's the most beautiful room in the world." Next, they went to see Dave's room. It was a spacious suite on the first floor, with a privileged view of the garden. Everything had been thought out for his comfort. Ergonomic furniture, discreet grab bars on the walls, a reclining sofa near the window. "Ms. Audrey, this is too much," he protested emotionally. "There was no need for so much luxury." "You deserve this and much more," she replied firmly. "You're our hero, have you forgotten?" Sam's room was on the same floor, adapted with all the necessary medical equipment, but without losing its welcoming atmosphere. Audrey had decorated it with family photos, including a special place for Maria's photo, now framed in silver. Lily stopped in front of the photo thoughtfully. "Do you think she would like to see us like this, all together?" "I'm sure she would," replied Sam softly. It was everything she ever wanted, a family full of love. The rest of the day was dedicated to exploring the house and starting to settle in. Audrey had hired a small staff, a cook, a housekeeper and a gardener, but made a point of keeping the team to a minimum to preserve the family's privacy. During dinner, served in the dining room overlooking the illuminated garden, Sam made an important announcement. "Tomorrow we start a new phase," he said, his voice stronger than in recent months. "I'm going to start working on the foundation project, even if from home for now." "What foundation?" asked Lily curiously. "A foundation to help people who need a second chance, like we needed," he explained. "Children without families, abandoned elderly. We're going to give them the same opportunity that fate gave us. And it will be called the Maria Foundation," completed Audrey, "in honor of the one who started it all." Lily's eyes sparkled. "Can I help too? I want to make other children happy, like I am now." "Of course you can," replied Sam. "In fact, you are the biggest inspiration for this project. Your strength, your kindness. It was you who taught us that there is always hope." Dave discreetly wiped away a tear. "You know what? I've spent my whole life building buildings, but I never understood the true meaning of building a home. Now I understand." After dinner, while the adults talked in the living room, Lily asked to go to the garden. She sat on the edge of the fountain, looking at the stars that were beginning to appear in the sky. "Thank you," she whispered, as if speaking to Maria. "Thank you for taking care of me even before I was born. I promise I'll make Daddy very happy." A soft breeze blew, swaying the flowers in the garden. Lily felt as if someone was hugging her, even though she was alone. It was a feeling of peace, of belonging that she had never experienced before. From the living room window, Sam watched his daughter with a heart full of love. The cancer was still present in his body, but now he had something much stronger inside him, the certainty that his life had a greater purpose. "Maria would be so proud," said Audrey, stopping next to her brother. "You fulfilled her dream in the most beautiful way possible." "It wasn't me," he replied, smiling. "It was fate, or maybe it was her, guiding us until we found each other." On that first night in their new home, each member of that improvised family went to sleep, with their heart overflowing with gratitude. Lily, in her princess room, fell asleep hugging a photo frame with Maria's picture. Dave, in his comfortable suite, thanked silently for having found at the end of his life the true meaning of family. And Sam, before falling asleep, looked at Maria's photo on his nightstand and whispered, "Thank you, my love, for not giving up on making us happy, even after leaving." But there were still more surprises reserved for that family. Fate hadn't finished weaving its threads, and an even more extraordinary discovery was about to happen, one that would forever change their understanding of how love can transcend time and space. Life in the Martin mansion gradually found its rhythm. Lily began to attend a private school nearby, where despite the delay in her studies, her dedication and intelligence impressed the teachers. Every morning, Dave made a point of taking her to the gate, taking advantage of the walk as part of his physical therapy. Sam continued his treatment at home, but seemed stronger every day. The doctors who visited him regularly didn't hide their surprise at the positive evolution of his condition. One Saturday morning, while Audrey was organizing some old documents in the office, she found a box that she hadn't seen in years. Inside were photos, letters, and a diary that had belonged to Maria. "Lily," she called, her voice trembling slightly. "Can you come here for a moment?" The girl, who was playing in the garden with a kitten she had adopted, ran into the house. She found Audrey sitting on the floor of the office, surrounded by old papers. "What is it, Aunt Audrey?" "I found some things from your mother, Maria," she replied, picking up the diary carefully. "I think you should see this." Lily sat next to her aunt, curious. The diary had a brown leather cover, worn by time, but still beautiful. Audrey opened to a page, marked with a ribbon. "Do you want me to read it to you?" The girl nodded, snuggling, closer to better see the delicate handwriting that filled the pages. "Today, I met someone special," began Audrey to read. "A young pregnant woman living on the streets. Her name is Clara, and there's something in her eyes that touched me deeply. Maybe it's because she reminds me of myself when I was younger. Lost, scared, but with an inner strength that not even she knows." Lily held her breath. Clara, it was the name of her biological mother, the one she could barely remember. Audrey continued reading. "Clara told me her story today. She ran away from home very young, went through situations that no woman should go through. But now she carries a new life inside her, and her eyes shine when she talks about the baby. She said she's sure it will be a girl." Silent tears began to run down Lily's face. Audrey hugged her with one arm, while continuing to read with the other. "Clara is very sick. The doctors say her condition is serious, that she may not survive childbirth. Today she made a request that changed my life. She wants me to take care of her daughter when she's born. You have enough love for two," she said, "and she's right. My heart is already overflowing with love for this child who hasn't even arrived yet." At that moment they were interrupted by Sam, who had entered the office silently in his wheelchair. "You found Maria's diary," he said softly. It wasn't a question. Audrey nodded. "Do you want us to keep reading?" Sam approached, positioning his chair next to them. "Please, I want to hear too." Audrey turned a few pages and continued. "Today, Clara chose the baby's name. It will be called Lily, which means God's promise. She said she chose that name because even amidst so much suffering, this child is like a song of hope in her life. Lily sobbed softly. So it was my real mother who chose my name. Yes, my angel, replied Sam, holding her hand. And Maria loved that name so much that she swore to keep it when she adopted you. Audrey continued reading. Clara got worse today. The doctors say we need to do an emergency delivery, even though it's a few weeks early. I'm so scared of losing both of them. But Clara is at peace. I know my daughter will have the best mother in the world, she said. Take care of her as if she were your own. Tell her that her first mother loved her very much, even without being able to stay. Tears now ran freely down the faces of all three. Audrey had to stop for a moment to compose herself before continuing. Lily was born today. She's the most beautiful baby I've ever seen, with big and expressive eyes like her mother's. Clara managed to hold her for a few minutes, gave her a kiss on the forehead and whispered, "Be happy, my little one." Then she was gone, with a serene smile on her face, as if she knew that her daughter would be in good hands. Lily cried openly now, clinging to the photo of Maria that she always carried with her. And then? What happened then? Audrey flipped through a few more pages. I signed the adoption papers today. Soon Lily will come home. She will officially be our daughter. Sam is as happy as I am. He's already bought the most beautiful crib he could find, decorated the room with stars on the ceiling. I can't wait to see our family complete. It was the last entry in the diary. The next page was blank. The accident had happened before Maria could write more. And I never knew any of this, said Sam. His voice choked. After the accident, I didn't want to know anything that reminded me of Maria. The social workers must have taken you to an orphanage, and then I ended up on the streets, completed Lily softly. But fate made sure to bring us together again, didn't it? At that moment, Dave appeared in the doorway. He had heard part of the conversation, and his eyes were also watery. Do you know what this means, little one? He asked, approaching the group. It means that you have always been part of this family. Since before you were born, you were already loved here. Audrey picked up a few more photos from the box. There was one of Clara, Lily's biological mother, a beautiful young woman with the same big and expressive eyes as her daughter, and several of Maria in the social project, helping other women, always with a radiant smile on her face. We're going to make a special album, decided Audrey, with photos of your two mothers, the one who gave you life and the one who chose to love you even without having met you. And we're going to put all our new photos too, to show how the story continues. And we're going to tell this story at the foundation, added Sam, to show that family is much more than blood. It's love, it's destiny, it's life going around, to bring the right people together. Lily picked up the diary carefully, hugging it together with Maria's photo. Can I sleep with it tonight? I want to dream about my two mothers. Of course you can, my angel, replied Sam. And tomorrow we're going to do something special. We're going to visit their graves. You can take flowers, talk to them. The girl nodded, wiping away her tears. I'm going to say that I'm okay, that I'm very happy, and that their love brought me back home. That night, before sleeping, Lily placed the diary and the photos of Maria and Clara on her nightstand. She looked at the stars through her window and smiled, feeling embraced by a love that transcended time and space. In the room next door, Sam also looked at the stars, thanking Maria silently for not giving up on their dream of having a family. Somehow, even after leaving, she had found a way to make that dream come true in the most extraordinary way possible. And as the Martin mansion silenced for another night, the love that united that improvised family seemed stronger than ever. A love that began with the dream of two mothers, survived tragedy and time, and finally found its place in the heart of a little girl who was born to be a song of hope. A year had passed since the night Lily found Sam in that dark hole. Spring was arriving again in Chicago, and the garden of the Martin mansion was especially flowered on that sunny morning. It was a special day, the official inauguration of the Maria Foundation. The event would bring together authorities, the press, and, more importantly, the first families who would benefit from the project. Lily, now 8 years old, helped set the tables in the garden, placing flowers on each one of them. "Everything is perfect, my angel," said Sam, approaching. He was no longer in a wheelchair. Now he walked with the help of a cane, and his face had regained color and vitality. The latest tests had surprised even the most skeptical doctors. The cancer, although still present, had stabilized in a way that no one could completely explain. "It's as if something stronger than medicine is acting," commented one of the specialists. Dave, who supervised the assembly of a small stage for the presentations, smiled as he saw Sam walking through the garden. His own arm was completely recovered, and he had become a fundamental part of the foundation, using his life experience to help other elderly people in vulnerable situations. "Who would have thought, right?" he commented, approaching Sam. "A year ago I was just an old man with a broken arm, and you a man who had given up on living. And now we are a family," completed Sam, watching Lily, who ran through the garden with her new dress, her hair shining in the sun. "The most unlikely and happiest family in the world." Audrey appeared on the balcony, carrying more papers. She was radiant. The foundation was both the realization of Maria's dream and her own dream. "The first group of children has arrived," she announced excitedly. "They want to meet Lily. She's like a legend to them." Indeed, the story of how a street girl had not only saved the life of a businessman, but also found her true family, had spread and inspired many people. The foundation had already received hundreds of registrations from families wanting to adopt, from elderly people needing support, from people wanting to help in some way. Lily ran to receive the children. There were 5 boys and 3 girls, all coming from the streets or from precarious shelters. Their eyes sparkled with admiration as they met her. "Is it true that you lived on the street?" asked one of the girls timidly. "And now you have a real family?" "Yes," replied Lily with a gentle smile, "and you will too. That's why we're here today." The opening ceremony began at noon. The garden was full, in addition to the authorities, and journalists. There were many simple people, homeless people that Lily knew from her time on the streets, elderly people that Dave had found in a state of abandonment. Sam stepped onto the small stage to make his speech. Beside him on a special table was a portrait of Maria, smiling her eternally gentle smile. "A year ago," he began, his voice strong and clear, "I was a man who had lost hope. Cancer consumed my body, and the loss of the love of my life had consumed my soul. I chose to give up, to surrender to fate at the bottom of a dark hole." He paused, his eyes finding Lily's in the audience. But then an angel appeared. A child who had nothing, who was hungry and cold, but whose heart was bigger than any wealth. She not only saved my life, she gave me back the will to live. Silent tears ran down the faces of many in the audience. "And fate," he continued, "showed its peculiar sense of humor, because that girl, whom chance put in my path, was the same one that my beloved wife Maria had chosen to be our daughter years ago. The same one that her biological mother, Clara, had entrusted to us before leaving." Lily, sitting between Audrey and Dave, held tightly the hand of each of them. "Today we inaugurate the Maria Foundation, not only to help people in vulnerable situations, but to prove that love always finds a way. That family is not just blood. It's choice, it's destiny, it's the heart recognizing its true ties." Audrey then rose, joining her brother on the stage. "Our first project will be the construction of a housing complex for elderly and homeless families. Not an ordinary shelter, but a real home, with all the necessary structure to start over. "And I will personally supervise the work," announced Dave, also standing up, drawing smiles from the audience. "Because I know that every brick laid with love can change a life." Lily was the last to take the stage. Her light blue dress fluttered with the breeze, and her eyes shone with a wisdom beyond her years. "When I lived on the streets," she said, her voice small but firm, "I thought I would never have a family, but I learned that true love knows no barriers. It can be born in the most unlikely place, like a dark hole on a cold night." She took Sam's hand, who was now crying openly. "My mother Clara gave me life. My mother Maria gave me her love even without knowing me. And now I have the best dad in the world, the most dedicated aunt, and the bravest grandpa anyone could want." She turned to the children in the audience, especially those who, like her one day, had nothing but hope. "So, never give up. Because family is much more than a name or an address. It's where the heart finds its place. And sometimes you have to get completely lost to finally find yourself." When she finished speaking, there wasn't a dry eye in the garden. The flowers swayed gently with the breeze, and the sun seemed to shine brighter, as if the sky itself wanted to bless that moment. Sam hugged his daughter, feeling his heart overflow with love and gratitude. The cancer was still in his body, but now it was just a detail, because he had found something much stronger than any disease: the love of a true family. Audrey looked at Maria's portrait, and she could swear that the smile in her photo was even more radiant. Dave, the old construction worker who had broken his arm to save a stranger, was now the proudest grandpa in the world. And Lily, the little girl who one day had nothing but her kindness, now had everything she had ever dreamed of, and much more. Because she had learned that the greatest miracles happen when we open our heart to the improbable. The Maria Foundation began its work that same day, welcoming its first families, and on the walls of its headquarters, a phrase in golden letters summarized its mission: "Because true love always finds its way back home."